What's up, everybody? We are in 1 Kings 12 today, roughly page 364 in the scriptures. I would recommend, if you haven't been following along, you go follow along in the previous videos, or even better, bust your Bible out, read 1 Kings up to chapter 12, and then read along with us now. Chapter 12. Well, actually, we're going to, for context, start again in 1 Kings 11. Probably, let's say 33. Because they have forsaken me and bowed themselves to the Ashtaroth, which are phalluses, which are now monuments, like the Washington Monument, and also monuments that are on top of churches called steeples, and bow themselves to Ashtaroth, the mighty one of the Sidonians, and to Chemosh, the mighty one of the Moabites, and to Milcom, the mighty one of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways to do what is right in my eyes, and my laws, and my right rulings, as did his father David. This is the Lord your God, Yahweh, speaking. But I do not take all the reign, all the kingdom out of his hand, because I have made him ruler of all the days of his life, for the sake of my servant David, whom I chose, because he guarded my commands and my laws. And I shall take the kingdom, the reign, out of his son's hand, and give it to you, and the 10 tribes. And to his son I give 1 tribe, so that my servant David shall always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen for myself to put my name there. So I take you, and you shall reign over all that your being desires, all that your soul desires, you're going to reign over, homie, to put my name there. And you shall be king over Israel. And it shall be, if you obey all that I command you, and shall walk in my ways, and to do what is right in my eyes, to guard my laws and my commands, as my servant David did. Then I shall be with you, and build for you a steadfast house, as I built for David, and shall give Israel to you. This all points back to Messiah being a king in the line of David. Yeshua, Jesus, can only be a king in the line of David if he obeyed all that he was commanded by the Father, and walked in his ways, and did what was right in his eyes, and guarded the laws and the commands, as his servant David did. And shall give Israel to you. And because of this I humble the seed of David, but not forever. And Solomon sought to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam rose up and fled to Mitzrayim. Jeroboam fled to Egypt, to Shishak, king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, and was in Mitzrayim until the death of Solomon. And the rest of the acts of Solomon, all that he did in his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the acts of Solomon? And all the days that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. So Solomon slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of David, his father, and Rehoboam, his son, reigned in his place. Now, we're going to get a split here between Israel and Judah. It's been coming. We've been talking about it. But we're getting into the 2 houses here, the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And what we're going to see here is Rehoboam reigns over the house of Judah. And Jeroboam, I know, it's not even confusing at all, is it? Rehoboam reigns over the house of Israel. And Jeroboam, or Jeroboam, reigns over the house of Judah. Okay, so 2 houses, 2 separate groups of people from Israel united to 2 separate houses at this point. So starting in chapter 12. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone to Shechem to set him up for reign. So everybody's together to put Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, in place to reign. And it came to be, when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, heard this, he was still in Mitzrayim, for he had fled from the presence of King Solomon and had been dwelling in Mitzrayim. Jeroboam, the other guy, also in Egypt, they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, so Solomon's kid, the prince, if you will, is confronted by Jeroboam and all of Israel. And they say, verse 4, your father made our yoke hard, and now lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us, and then we serve you. Your father was a hard man. We built this temple, we did a bunch of stuff, we're ready for a break. You make things go easier for us, we will follow you. And he, Rehoboam, said to them, go away for 3 days, and then come back to me. And the people went. And then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who stood before his father Solomon while he still lived. And he said, what do you advise me to answer these people? Good question to good people. And they spoke to him, saying, if you are a servant to these people today, and shall serve them, and shall answer them and speak good words to them, then they shall be your servants all the days. But he ignored the advice of the elders, and consulted the young men who had grown up with him, who stood before him, his little a-hole buddies. I wonder what Josh and Aaron think. And he said to them, what advice do you give? How should we answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, lighten the yoke which your father put on us? And the young men, who are sycophants, who have been trading on the name of Rehoboam to this point, who have no life experiences, other than probably a lavish lifestyle. I can just imagine it. We're talking about spoiled kids at this point, right? Versus the wisdom of the elders. And the young men who had grown up with him spoke to him, saying, say this to the people who have spoken to you, saying, your father made our yoke heavy, but you make it lighter on us. Say this to them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. And now my father laid a heavy yoke on you, but I add to your yoke. My father flogged you with whips, but I flog you with scourges. You thought my dad was bad? Wait till you see my kingdom. So Jeroboam and all the people, all of Israel, came back to Rehoboam to see what he had to say on the 3rd day, as the king had spoken, saying, come back to me on the 3rd day. But the king answered the people harshly and ignored the advice which the elders had given them. And he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, but I add to your yoke. My father flogged you with whips, but I flog you with scourges. So the king did not listen to the people, for the turn of events was from Yahweh, in order to establish his word, which Yahweh had spoken to Ahijah the Shilohanite, to Jeroboam the son of Nebat, meaning that Ahijah from Shiloh had prophesied to Jeroboam, hey, things are going to go bad for the house of Israel. There's going to be a split. And this was of Yah. This is important to understand. There's definitely people's hardness of heart involved here. There's definitely transgression of the laws we're going to see. There is definitely ignorance and stupidity on behalf of Rehoboam. But this was of Yah. And all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them. Then the people answered the king, saying, what portion do we have in David? And there is no inheritance in the son of Jesse, the line of Jesse, Rehoboam. Jesse, then David, then Solomon, and now Rehoboam. And there is no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your mighty ones, O Israel. To your mighty ones, O Israel. Now see to your own house, O David. So Israel went to their tents. But as for the children of Israel who dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. So everybody but those living in the area of Judah, who dwelt in the cities of Judah, everybody else left with Jeroboam. And when King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the compulsory labor, okay, yeah, we're going to go get some more people to do the work. So Rehoboam says, yeah, listen, y'all, you thought my dad was bad. You haven't seen nothing yet. Israel basically says, screw you, bro. We're going to our tents. And then Rehoboam sends this guy Adoram out to go collect people to do all this work that he's got planned. Back to verse 18. All Israel stoned him with stones, and he died. They rejected his authority. They weren't going to do it. And sovereign Rehoboam hastily mounted his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. Thus Israel revolted against the house of David to this day. And it came to be when all Israel heard that Jeroboam had come back, they sent for him, and come back from Mitzrayim, where he was hiding out from Solomon. They sent for him and called him to the congregation and set him up to reign over all of Israel. So now we've got two kings, Jeroboam reigning over Israel and Rehoboam reigning over the cities of Judah. There was none who followed the house of David except the tribe of Judah only. And Rehoboam came to Jerusalem, and he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen men, to fight against the house of Israel. Okay, so there was nobody but Judah. But then Rehoboam comes to Jerusalem, and Benjamin is coerced or bought off or whatever, convinced to partner with Judah. So Benjamin and Judah are two of the 12 tribes that are the house of Judah. The other 10 tribes are the house of Israel, plus the Levites. And we're going to see the Levites kind of bounce back and forth from the house of Judah to the house of Israel. And on multiple occasions, there's Levites in both houses. And in some cases, there's no Levites in one house or the other house. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And Rehoboam came to Jerusalem, and he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen brave men, to fight against the house of Israel, to bring back the kingdom to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. So Rehoboam, since Israel killed his guy, Adoram, says, all right, get me all the soldiers. They get 180,000 men put together, and he's going to now make Israel comply by force, comma. Verse 22, but the word of Elohim came to Shemaiah, the man of Elohim, saying, speak to Rehoboam, son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people. Thus says Yahweh, do not go up or fight against your brothers, the children of Israel. Let every man return to his house, for this matter is from me. So they obeyed the word of Yahweh and turned back according to the word of Yahweh. And Jeroboam built Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim and dwelt there. And he went out from there and built Penuel. So Jeroboam needs to establish a place for him to be, since he's not in Jerusalem. He's got 10 tribes to deal with. So he built Shechem. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now the reign shall return to the house of David. If these people, the 10 tribes, go up to do slaughterings in the house of Yahweh, the temple, at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people shall turn back to their master, Rehoboam, sovereign of Judah, and they shall kill me, and go back to Rehoboam, sovereign of Judah. So he has an issue here. He says he knows sooner or later it's going to be time for feast times and offerings. And these people are going to go up to Jerusalem, to the temple, which is controlled by Rehoboam. And Jeroboam is going to lose his control over these people, and they're going to come back and kill him. Verse 28. So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. It's too far. It's too far of a drive, guys. It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. See, your mighty ones, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim. And he set up one in Bethel and one in Dan. So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. 2, not 1, 2 calves of gold. And said, it is too much for you to go to Jerusalem. See your mighty ones, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim. Didn't somebody else make some calves on their way out from Mitzrayim? Oh, right, Aaron, Moses' brother. And the Levites put their swords upon their thigh and went north to south, east to west, and slayed every man who had bent the knee to Baal, or this golden calf. So, Rehoboam is in Judah, Jerusalem. Jeroboam is afraid that people are going to go back to Jerusalem, do a service at the temple, and come back and kill him. So to keep them from going to Jerusalem, Jeroboam makes these 2 golden calves and sets them up, one in Bethel and the other in Dan. Verse 30, and this matter became a sin, for the people went before the one as far as Dan. And he made the house of high places and made priests from all sorts of people who were not the sons of Levi. It's just appointing priests. oh, you want to be a priest? Turns out you can just be a priest. We'll just give the appointment of the priesthood away. So it's interesting in 30 it says, this matter became a sin, for the people went before the one as far as Dan. What is sin? 1 John 3 verse 4, sin is transgression of the law. So the question becomes, what law did they transgress? If it's a sin, as it clearly says, we flip to Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 6. And Elohim spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters of the earth. You do not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving commitment to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commands. There's the sin. This is the beginning of what we call the 10 Commandments, Exodus chapter 20, which are still in play now, like all the other commands, other than the ones relating to the temple and the high priesthood, because the temple's in our heart, and Yeshua, Jesus, is the priest, which is addressed in the book of Hebrews. Everything else is still in play. And it was certainly, regardless of where you stand on that last statement, still in play in a time here. And so, verse 30, this matter became a sin. What sin? That. They transgressed the first of the 10 commands. Do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving commitment to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commands. Not those who love me, not those who guard my commands, those who love me and guard my commands. Back to 1 Kings 12. And this matter became a sin, for the people went before the one as far as Dan. And he, Jeroboam, made the house of high places. He built temples and made priests of all sorts of people who were not the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam performed a festival on the 15th day of the 8th new moon. By the way, all the festivals, the appointed time, the Moedim, are in Leviticus 23. And I was searching Leviticus 23 earlier, trying to see if this was a day that was prescribed by the Lord our God, Yahweh our Elohim. And it turns out it's not. It's precisely 1 month after Sukkot. The significance of that, I don't know. Other than, clearly, they're not doing what Yah told them to do. And Jeroboam performed a festival on the 15th day of the 8th new moon, like the festival that was in Judah. So he had a facsimile of Sukkot, the slaughtering, which is commanded in Leviticus 23, 1 month later. And he offered on the slaughter place. So he did at Bethel, slaughtering the calves that he had made, slaughtering to the calves that he had made. And at Bethel he appointed the priests of the high places which he had made. And he made offerings on the slaughter place which he had made at Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th new moon, in the new moon which he had devised from his own heart. So he picked a day, his day, not Yah's day, slaughtering to these false idols. If you don't see the parallels here between modern Christianity with its pagan influence and Judaism with its Babylonian influence versus read the Bible and do what it says, I don't know what to tell you. And he made offerings on the slaughter place which he had made at Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th new moon, in the new moon which he had devised in his own heart. And he performed a festival for the children of Israel, and offered on the slaughter place, and burnt incense. So 1 Kings 13 It's fascinating, and it ties into 12. But it's going to take a little bit of time to delve into 13, so I think we're going to end here for today. A little quick one for us today, about 20 minutes long. What's the point of all this? 1 Kings 12. First of all, Solomon, who was a righteous man until he wasn't, and who was a powerful man his whole life, his, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. His son, Rehoboam, is in no way serving Yah. He has no compassion on his people who are saying, hey, lighten our load. What does Yeshua say? Come to me, all ye who labor. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. That's a reference to this, because Yeshua is a good king in the line of David. Doesn't mean there isn't a yoke. Doesn't mean there isn't a burden. But he is a good king in the line of David. Rehoboam is not. And so because of the actions of Rehoboam, Israel officially splits into two houses, the house of Israel and the house of Judah. The house of Israel being Manasseh, Ephraim, Naphtali, Dan, Gad, etc. And the house of Judah being Benjamin and Judah. So there's officially a split now. And Jeroboam, who there are prophets Shemaiah saying, hey, this is of the hand of Yah, that this would happen. Not these things that you're doing, but this plan here that this would happen. People who are claiming the name of God, behaving in ways that God clearly tells them they're not supposed to. Imagine that. And so Jeroboam devises a festival after his own heart at with a slaughter place that his hands made, not the Levites, not to the specification of Yah, on a day that he picked, not on a day that Yah commanded. And he slaughtered to abominations. So Jeroboam didn't have it going on either. And so we've got poor leadership at this point in both Israel and Judah. And as we're going to see in 13, attempts are made to rectify that. And we shall see. We're going to meet a guy by the name of Josiah. I would encourage you in the meanwhile to read 2 Kings 23. There's also in 2 Chronicles the story of Josiah. And he's also mentioned in the genealogy of Yeshua in Gospel of Matthew chapter 1. So kind of a biblical strongman coming up in 13. In the meanwhile, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for being here. I love your comments down below, by the way. Hey, I'm here. I thank you. Or thanks for spending time with us there to read the word. You're welcome. I really, truly hope that you read your word as well. I'm just blessed to be here. So, thanks. Bless y'all. Shalom.